There comes a moment in every man's life when the applause grows silent, when the pursuit of women feels hollow, when success tastes like ash. And in that moment, something ancient stirs beneath his achievements, a sadness that has no face, a longing that logic cannot soothe. It is then that he meets the ghost of his first love, not a woman in the world, but the mother within his unconscious. Carl Jung warned us of this moment. He called it the mother complex, an invisible inheritance, a psychological architecture so deep that until it is made conscious, a man's entire life becomes a reaction to a wound he doesn't even know he carries. This isn't about blaming your mother. It's about understanding that the most dangerous prisons are not made of bars, but of internalized expectations, archaic archetypes, and the unspoken belief that love must be earned by becoming what she never asked for, but what you thought she needed. From the first breath, she was the world. Her smile was approval. Her silence was punishment. She was the first mirror, and what you saw in her eyes, you took to be the truth of your worth. But Jung teaches us this. The archetype of the mother is not the mother herself. It is a symbol rooted deep in the collective unconscious, a blueprint of origin, nourishment, protection, but also of engulfment, regression, and psychological dependence if left unintegrated. And that's the fracture. When the real woman, your actual mother, fails to meet the impossible ideals of that archetype, the child does not mourn. He adapts. He creates a version of himself designed to win her gaze, to earn affection, to survive. That version becomes the mask, and the mask becomes the man. But inside, still lives the boy, aching, performing, compensating, chasing women, not for intimacy, but for repair. Not for connection, but to resurrect the mother who lives inside the wound. Jung said, "What is not made conscious will be lived as fate." And so you repeat the pattern. You fall in love with women who mirror her coldness, her distance, her silence. You self-sabotage just as you're about to succeed. You collapse in the presence of feminine disapproval, not because you're weak, but because a part of you still believes that her gaze decides whether you are worthy of existing. And here's the part most men never dare to face. You can't become whole until you kill the illusion. You can't individuate, can't become your own man, until you step out of the psychic orbit of your mother. Jung didn't mean kill in the literal sense. He meant differentiate. To see her not as goddess or villain, but as a human being, limited, wounded, shaped by her own shadow. Until you do that, you are not loving her. You are worshipping an idea or battling a myth. Both are illusions, and both will keep you broken. So ask yourself, are you really choosing your life? Or are you still trying to prove your worth to a mother who has long since stopped watching? This is not self-help. This is soul surgery. Because every time you react with irrational guilt, every time you feel paralyzed by rejection, every time you overfunction in relationships, you are not acting as a man. You are echoing the child who still hopes that if he's good enough, he'll finally be chosen. But healing doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself and releasing the sacred expectation that the mother who gave you life can also give you identity. She can't. That's your task now. A man who hasn't made peace with the inner mother doesn't date. He reenacts. He doesn't lead. He compensates. He doesn't love. He pleads for redemption in disguise. Because what haunts him isn't a person. It's a projection. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious projects its contents onto the external world when they are not integrated within. And what is more powerful, more magnetic to the unexamined man than the image of the feminine? So he seeks her, not as a partner, but as a mirror, a surrogate mother who can finally complete the story that never ended. And so begins the great illusion. He calls it chemistry, but it's repetition. He says, she completes me, but it's regression. The boy reaching for the breast of emotional security he was once denied. Jung called this anima projection, when a man's inner feminine, shaped largely by the first woman in his life, is cast onto the women he meets. He doesn't see them. He sees her, the mother, the hope, the hunger, and it breaks him. Because no woman can carry the weight of an unconscious child. She becomes overwhelmed by the burden of expectations he can't articulate. that she save him, soothe him, forgive him, complete him, but without him ever having to ask. Because the boy doesn't ask. He just waits. And when she can't give what even his own mother could not, he feels abandoned again, not by her, but by the wound she accidentally opened. This is the cycle Jung warned us about, the fate of a man who has not withdrawn his projections. He will turn every relationship into a ritual sacrifice, bleeding out his soul to recover something that cannot be retrieved, the perfect mother that never was. And so the question becomes, how long will you let the past dictate your gaze? How long will you confuse love with salvation? Because as long as the mother archetype inside you remains idealized or demonized, you are not seeing clearly. You are not seeing her nor yourself. And until that changes, you will confuse intimacy with need, sex with healing, silence with rejection, and abandonment with destiny. But here's the truth Jung offered, wrapped in fire. The feminine must be reclaimed, not repeated, and to do that, the man must descend into his own unconscious. He must confront the pain he buried, not to punish his mother, but to retrieve his soul. This descent is what Jung called individuation, not the pursuit of perfection, but the integration of shadow, the transformation of unconscious pattern into conscious choice. So what does that mean for you, brother? It means that until you face the wound, you will keep asking the world to mother you, and the world will not. The world will break you until you become your own protector, until you father yourself, until you withdraw the ancient loyalty to a pain that never served you. And that process is not poetic. It is disorienting, because the moment you stop seeking your mother in women, you will feel alone. Not because you are, but because for the first time, you are standing in the silence she used to fill. And it is in that silence that the real man begins to take shape. You think you're stuck because you're lazy. You think you haven't succeeded because you're not disciplined enough. But what if the truth is darker? What if you're not failing? You're being loyal. Carl Jung observed that the unconscious is governed not by logic but by myth. And one of the oldest myths it clings to is this: if I grow beyond the suffering of those who raised me, I betray them. This is the unspoken pact. The boy doesn't write it, but he lives by it. And it sounds like this: if my mother struggled, who am I to thrive? If she lived unloved, how dare I feel chosen? If she carried pain her whole life, what right do I have to feel free? This is not reasoning. It's not conscious. It's emotional gravity, pulling you back to the psychic atmosphere of your childhood, to the room you outgrew physically, but never left psychologically. So what happens? You dim your light just before success. You ruin good relationships before they become safe. You seek rejection just to feel familiar, not because you want to, but because some deep part of you whispers, if I heal, I leave her behind. Jung called this kind of loyalty a binding archetypal possession, when the archetype is not just influencing you, but inhabiting you, when your mother's pain becomes your identity, when you carry her sadness like a relic, afraid to let it go, because if you do, who are you without it? You become her echo, her shadow, her second chance, not consciously, not maliciously, but faithfully, as a son trying to make right what was never his to fix. And here's the paradox that breaks most men. You cannot honor your mother by suffering alongside her. You can only honor her by evolving beyond her. This is not betrayal. This is liberation. Because the purpose of a son is not to remain in orbit around the mother's grief. It is to step out of it, to carry forward what was unlived, to become the branch that breaks the cycle without severing the roots. That is real maturity. That is the birth of the adult self, not as a reaction to pain, but as a conscious act of differentiation. So if you find yourself sabotaging your own success, if you keep choosing smallness, if you shrink around joy, peace, or power, ask yourself the question most men never dare to face. Who am I betraying by being happy? And when the answer comes, and it will come in a whisper, you'll know exactly where the wound still lives. But here's your truth, and you need to tattoo it into your soul. Her pain is not your destiny. She gave you life, yes, but what you do with that life, That is your offering back to her. You are not here to repeat her story. You are here to complete it, not by carrying her suffering, but by transcending it, so that one day, when you look into your own reflection, you no longer see her sadness, but your own sovereignty. There's a kind of loneliness no one talks about, the loneliness that lives inside a man who has abandoned himself. He wakes up, performs, smiles when expected, but if you were to look beneath the surface, you'd find a child curled in the corner of his psyche, unseen, unheard, and still waiting for the warmth that never came. Jung said that what remains unconscious doesn't disappear. It lives on as fate. And the greatest fate of the unhealed man is this: he becomes the very presence he once needed, but never received. Not toward others, toward himself. He tells himself to toughen up when he needs compassion. He pushes through exhaustion when he needs to rest. He mocks his own pain, laughs off his sadness, and punishes himself for emotions he would soothe in anyone else. He becomes his own authoritarian figure, his own absent nurturer, his own silent judge. This is the final frontier of the mother complex, emotional self-abandonment. It's not just about what she did. It's about how you now treat yourself in the same language. It's about how her disapproval still echoes in your mind, but now in your own voice. Jung spoke of this as the inner mother, an archetype that, when wounded, sits at the throne of your psyche and governs your worth, your choices, your relationships, your sense of safety in the world. So what do most men do? They run. They perform. They distract themselves with work, with women, with noise. But wherever they go, the same question follows them. Why do I feel empty, even when I do everything right? And the answer is this: because you left yourself to go win a love that was never yours to earn in the first place. You stopped checking in with yourself. You abandoned your joy, your softness, your intuition. Because the model of love you inherited taught you that your needs were too much, your sadness was inconvenient, and your vulnerability was weakness. But here's what Jung would tell you, and it's a truth men must hear with trembling hands. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who she needed you to be, not who you had to become to feel safe, but who you were before the adaptation. And to return to that man, you don't need more strength. You need compassion, not pity, not indulgence, but something far more courageous. The willingness to sit with your pain without trying to fix it, justify it, or silence it. That is self-fathering. That is reparenting. That is the act of becoming the internal guide you never had. And it's not a soft path. It's brutal. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you must face the grief you've been avoiding your whole life. But in that grief lives your redemption. Because the moment you say, I see you, I will not leave you again, something shifts. You are no longer the echo of your childhood. You are no longer begging love to find you. You are no longer trying to earn the approval of a ghost. You are finally coming home, not to her, but to you. You've spent your life trying not to become your father, but silently, you became a prisoner to your mother, not by choice, but by inheritance. And the tragedy isn't that she failed you, it's that you kept her voice alive inside your mind long after she left the room. Carl Jung understood something most modern men ignore. The point of growth isn't rebellion, it's separation with love. Like, share, subscribe, and if you can, donate to the channel, link in description.